You ever notice how two people can make the exact same salary, but somehow end up living completely different financial lives a few years later? One person slowly builds savings, investments, maybe even buys a house, while the other still feels stressed every single month waiting for payday to hit. Same income, same economy, sometimes even the same job. So what actually changed? Here's the thing. Most people don't fail financially because they're lazy. And honestly, that's one of the biggest lies the internet keeps repeating. A lot of hardworking people are still financially stuck because nobody ever taught them the correct order to use money. They start investing too early while drowning in debt. They save cash without understanding inflation. They take huge risks trying to catch up financially. And over time, one wrong decision compounds into years of frustration. Look, the financial world loves oversimplified advice. Just invest. Just buy stocks. Just work harder. But money doesn't work like that. There's an order to building wealth, and if you get the order wrong, you can work incredibly hard for years and still feel like you're going nowhere financially. My name is Demas, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you're someone who feels stuck financially, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Now let me say something that might sound a little controversial. A lot of people are investing way too early. And no, I'm not saying investing is bad. Obviously, investing matters. Long-term investing is one of the most powerful tools for building wealth. But here's what most people don't realize. Investing is not the first step to financial freedom. Financial stability is, because if your financial foundation is weak, investing becomes emotionally exhausting. Every market drop feels terrifying. Every emergency forces you to sell investments early. And suddenly, what was supposed to build wealth becomes another source of stress. According to Federal Reserve data, many Americans would struggle to cover even a small emergency expense with cash. Not because everyone is irresponsible, but because modern life is expensive, unpredictable, and mentally draining. So before growing money, you first need protection from financial chaos. The first step is creating financial breathing room, not becoming rich overnight. Not building a massive investment portfolio, just creating enough stability so life stops feeling like an emergency every single month. That means having a small emergency fund, stable monthly cash flow, and no longer relying on credit cards just to survive until the next paycheck. Here's why this matters so much psychologically. Humans make terrible financial decisions when they're stressed. When your brain feels financially threatened, long-term thinking disappears almost instantly. You stop focusing on building wealth and start focusing on survival. That's why people panic sell during market crashes. That's why people chase risky investments hoping for fast money. That's why emotional spending becomes so common after stressful days. Stress shortens your time horizon. So before you think about maximizing investment returns, your first goal should be stability. Even saving just $1,000 to $2,000 can dramatically reduce financial anxiety because emergencies stop becoming disasters. And honestly, peace of mind is one of the most underrated financial assets you can have. Now we get to one of the biggest financial debates on the internet. Should you invest your money first or pay off debt first? And honestly, the answer becomes pretty obvious once you look at the math. If you have high-interest debt, especially credit card debt, paying it off is usually the smarter move first. Because here's what most people don't realize. Paying off a credit card charging 24% interest is basically the same as getting a guaranteed 24% return on your money. And realistically, you are not consistently making that in the stock market year after year. Let's use a simple example. Imagine you invest $10,000 into the market and earn an average 8% annual return. That sounds great, right? You made around $800. But at the same time, imagine you also carry $10,000 in credit card debt charging 24% interest. That debt is costing you around $2,400 per year. So technically, your investing gains are getting destroyed faster than they can grow. And this is why so many people feel financially stuck for years, even while investing. Once high-interest debt is finally under control, this is where most people should focus next. Building a real emergency fund. Usually around 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses. And I know, a lot of people online say keeping cash is a waste because your money should always be invested. But honestly, that advice ignores how unpredictable real life actually is. Cash has a purpose. Its purpose is protection. Because investments work best when you can leave them alone for long periods of time. But emergencies don't care about market conditions. Imagine the stock market suddenly crashes 30%, and at the exact same time, you lose your job or your car breaks down. Without emergency savings, you're forced to sell investments at the worst possible moment just to survive financially. That's exactly what an emergency fund prevents. Your savings protect your investments from emotional decisions, and psychologically, having cash changes the way people behave. People with emergency savings negotiate salaries more confidently, leave toxic jobs sooner, and make smarter long-term decisions because desperation disappears. And honestly, desperation is one of the most expensive emotions in personal finance. Now, this is the stage where investing finally starts making sense. And if your employer offers a retirement match, you should take advantage of it immediately, because this is basically free money. If your company matches 5% of your retirement contributions, that's an instant 100% return before your investments even grow. Very few financial opportunities give you that kind of guaranteed return with almost zero risk. But here's where most people make a mistake. They think successful investing is about constantly finding the next big thing. The next crypto coin, the next hot stock, the next investment trend everybody online is talking about. But wealthy people usually build money in a much more boring way: consistency. That's the real secret. Let's say someone invests $500 every month into a diversified index fund averaging around 8% annually. Over 30 years, that can grow into hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially even over $1 million, depending on contribution increases over time. Not because they were lucky, not because they predicted markets perfectly, but because they stayed consistent long enough for compounding to work. And honestly, consistency is harder than people think because emotions constantly try to interrupt the process. Now, here's one of the biggest reasons people stay financially stuck even after their income increases: lifestyle inflation. This is where things start getting dangerous financially because it happens slowly and quietly. You get a raise at work, and suddenly your spending increases too. You upgrade your apartment. You finance a nicer car. You start eating out more often. You buy things not because you truly need them, but because your brain feels like you've earned it. And look, enjoying your money is not the problem. There's nothing wrong with improving your quality of life after working hard. The problem starts when every increase in income immediately disappears into a more expensive lifestyle, because then financially nothing actually changes. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly normalize improvements in lifestyle. What once felt luxurious eventually starts feeling normal, and then your brain wants another upgrade. This is why some people making six figures still feel broke. Their income increased, but their financial discipline didn't. And social media makes this even worse because modern culture rewards the appearance of wealth more than actual financial stability. Here's what most wealthy people quietly understand that almost nobody talks about enough. Building wealth is less about making perfect financial decisions and more about avoiding catastrophic ones. That's the real secret. A lot of people think wealthy individuals are constantly finding incredible investments or predicting the market perfectly. But honestly, many of them simply survive financially long enough for compounding to do the heavy lifting. They avoid massive high-interest debt. They avoid panic selling during crashes. They avoid emotional spending and gambling behavior. And most importantly, they stay consistent for decades. This is where it gets really interesting. Wealth building is actually kind of boring most of the time. Nobody goes viral saying, "I consistently invested into diversified assets for 25 years." But that's exactly how many financially successful people quietly build their money. Slowly, repeatedly, patiently, and honestly, that should be encouraging. Because it means you do not need to be a financial genius to become wealthy. You don't need to predict the next market crash or find some secret investment strategy. You simply need enough discipline to avoid destroying your own progress. So if I had to simplify the smartest order to invest your money, it would look something like this. First, create a small emergency buffer so unexpected problems stop turning into financial disasters. Second, aggressively eliminate high-interest debt, especially credit cards, because the interest quietly destroys your future wealth faster than most investments can grow. Third, Build a full emergency fund with at least 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. This gives you stability, confidence, and protection during difficult times. Fourth, take advantage of employer retirement matching if it's available because that is essentially free money. And finally, consistently invest into diversified long-term assets while avoiding unnecessary lifestyle inflation as your income grows. Simple. Not flashy, but incredibly effective over time. Look, most people think financial success comes from one lucky investment or one massive breakthrough. But honestly, wealth is usually built through small, smart decisions repeated for many years. Because eventually, money stops feeling like survival. It starts feeling like freedom. Freedom to make better decisions. Freedom to take opportunities. Freedom to stop living in constant financial stress. And honestly, that's the real goal behind all of this.